The Man in the Iron Mask by Alexandre Dumas. Chapter 1, Part 3. This also was done by design then, just as they deprived you of mirrors, which reflect the present, so they left you in ignorance of history, which reflects the past. Since your imprisonment, books have been forbidden you, so that you are unacquainted with a number of facts, by means of which you would be able to reconstruct the shattered mansion of your recollections and your hopes. It is true, said the young man. Listen, then. I will in a few words tell you what has passed in France during the last 23 or 24 years. That is, from the probable date of your birth. In a word, from the time that interests you. Say on. And the young man resumed his serious and attentive attitude. Do you know who was the son of Henry the Fourth? At least I know who his successor was. How? By means of a coin dated 1610, which bears the effigy of Henry the Fourth, and another of 1612, bearing that of Louis the 13th. So I presume that, there being only 2 years between the two dates, Louis was Henry's successor. Then said Aramis, you know that the last reigning monarch was Louis the 13th? I do, answered the youth, slightly reddening. Well, he was a prince full of noble ideas and great projects, always, alas, deferred by the trouble of the times and the dread struggle that his minister, Richelieu, had to maintain against the great nobles of France. The king himself was of a feeble character, and died young and unhappy. I know it. He had been long anxious about having a heir, a care which weighs heavily on princes, who desire to leave behind them more than one pledge that their best thoughts and works will be continued. Did the king, then, die childless? Asked the prisoner, smiling. No, but he was long without one, and for a long while thought he should be the last of his race. This idea had reduced him to the depths of despair, when suddenly his wife, Anne of Austria. The prisoner trembled. Did you know, said Aramis, that Louis the 13th's wife was called Anne of Austria? Continue. Continue, said the young man, without replying to the question. When suddenly, resumed Aramis, the queen announced an interesting event. There was great joy at the intelligence, and all prayed for her happy delivery. On the 5th of September, 1638, she gave birth to a son. Here Aramis looked at his companion, and thought he observed him turning pale. You are about to hear, said Aramis, an account which few indeed could now avouch, for it refers to a secret which they imagined buried with the dead, entombed in the abyss of the confessional. And you will tell me this secret? Broke in the youth. Oh, said Aramis with unmistakable emphasis, I do not know that I ought to risk this secret by entrusting it to one who has no desire to quit the Bastille. I hear you, monsieur. The queen then gave birth to a son. But while the court was rejoicing over the event, when the king had shown the newborn child to the nobility and people, and was sitting gaily down to table to celebrate the event, the queen, who was alone in her room, was again taken ill and gave birth to a second son. Oh, said the prisoner, betraying a better acquaintance with affairs than he had owned to, I thought that monsieur was only born in... Aramis raised his finger. Permit me to continue, he said. The prisoner sighed impatiently and paused. Yes, said Aramis, the queen had a second son, whom Dame Paranet, the midwife, received in her arms. Dame Paranet, murmured the young man. They ran at once to the banqueting room and whispered to the king what had happened. He rose and quitted the table, but this time it was no longer happiness that his face expressed, but something akin to terror. The birth of twins changed into bitterness the joy to which that of an only son had given rise. Seeing that in France, a fact you are assuredly ignorant of, it is the oldest of the king's sons who succeeds his father. I know it. And that the doctors and jurists assert that there is ground for doubting whether the son that first makes his appearance is the elder by the law of heaven and of nature. The prisoner uttered a smothered cry, and became whiter than the coverlet under which he hid himself. Now you understand, pursued Aramis, that the king, who with so much pleasure saw himself repeated in one, was in despair about two, fearing that the second might dispute the first claim to seniority, which had been recognized only 2 hours before. And so this second son, relying on party interests and caprices, might one day sow discord and endanger civil war throughout the kingdom, by these means destroying the very dynasty he should have strengthened. Oh, I understand, murmured the young man. Well, continued Aramis, this is what they relate, what they declare. This is why one of the queen's 2 sons, shamefully parted from his brother, shamefully sequestered, is buried in profound obscurity. This is why that second son has disappeared, and so completely that not a soul in France, save his mother, is aware of his existence. Yes, His mother who has cast him off, cried the prisoner in a tone of despair. Except also, Aramis went on, the lady in the black dress, and finally accepting yourself, is it not? You who come and relate all this, you who rouse in my soul curiosity, hatred, ambition, and perhaps even the thirst of vengeance, except you, monsieur, who, if you are the man to whom I expect, whom the note I have received applies, to whom, in short, heaven ought to send me, must possess about you.